Hi, friends. I'm Matt Goldberg, and today I'll share one of my cozy bedtime stories with you. This one is about a magical museum where ancient creatures come to life and the magic of autumn fills every hall. Evening was thickening, and darkness carried a quiet sense of peace. It was Elias's hour, the night watchman of the Museum of Ancient History and Unknown Wonders. He was about 35, a man who had found his solace in the hush and melancholy of old archives. His duty was to guard the slumber of the exhibits. He walked along a narrow cobblestone path leading toward the museum. The path was strewn with autumn leaves that lay like a dense, damp carpet. Each of his steps was accompanied by a soft, soothing rustle, the gentle whisper of autumn itself. The air was cold and impossibly clean, filled with the tart scent of wet foliage, mingled with woody undertones and a faint sweetness of smoke drifting from some faraway hearth. Elias could feel that cool, fresh air filling him, bringing with it a deep, unshakable calm. In his hand, he held a hot mug that pleasantly warmed his fingers. It was his ritual, a spiced pumpkin latte. He took a slow, deep sip, and the rich, comforting blend of cinnamon, nutmeg, and sweet pumpkin spread across his tongue. That golden, fragrant warmth wrapped around him, forming a soft cocoon against the chill of the autumn night. Ahead, the museum loomed, a massive, dark silhouette with tall columns. The building seemed steadfast, a slumbering vault of all ages. Elias slid the key into the lock, and a loud metallic scrape echoed across the empty square. The doors opened with a heavy groan. Elias stepped inside. The air within was cooler, thicker, scented with old dust, polished wax, and long forgotten secrets. The doors closed behind him with a deep thud, plunging him into twilight. He finished the last sip of his latte, the lingering spice grounding him once more. Then he switched on his lantern, and its beam swept over the marble floor. The silence was absolute. His shift had begun, and for now, nothing disturbed the calm rhythm of his nightly rounds. Elias moved slowly through the main hall. His footsteps, echoing dully beneath the high domed ceiling, were the only sound. In this vast vault of history, where every exhibit seemed to sleep, he felt the familiar, comforting calm that always came with solitude. He began his round. The beam of his lantern glided over bronze busts, ancient vases, and monumental skeletons. Everything was still and cold. The air itself seemed frozen in place. Elias entered the Hall of Minerals and Gemstones. It was always cool here, and especially quiet. He turned his light toward the central display case, where beneath thick glass lay the mountain crystal of forgetting, a massive, uncut piece of quartz. By day it was dull and gray, but now it was glowing. It wasn't the reflection of his lantern. The crystal was emitting its own faint inner light, ghostly blue, with a barely visible violet shimmer along the edges. Elias froze, his shoulder resting against the cold wall. The glow pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and he felt a cool, clear current flowing gently through the air. It wasn't bright or frightening, only breathtakingly beautiful and still, as if the crystal itself had begun to breathe. It shouldn't have been happening, yet it was undeniably real, a quiet fairy tale whisper of the night. Elias locked the moment in his mind, feeling a warm, thrilling anticipation awaken in his chest. He told himself it must be some trick of the autumn light, but the childlike sense of wonder had already taken hold. Elias left the Hall of Gemstones, and the ghostly blue imprint of the crystal lingered in his eyes as he made his way toward the Hall of Paleontology, where enormous, monumental skeletons stood in eternal stillness. Then he caught a sharp, fresh, grassy scent, something that had no place here. The smell of wet spring grass and freshly cut hay contrasted strangely with the dry dust of the museum. Elias froze. His lantern slipped from his hand, clattering across the marble floor before going dark. Yet the hall was filled with light. The giants had awakened. They were no longer bones, but vast, half transparent bodies woven from shimmering colored mist. The Triceratops glowed with a deep, amber orange hue, like molten honey steeped in autumn sunset. Its massive head and three horns were outlined in that warm, enveloping radiance, and from it came that same comforting scent of grass. The T Rex at the center gleamed with a pale, golden light, a creature of moonlight and drifting pollen, both mighty and ghost-like. And high under the vaulted ceiling, the pterodactyl hovered in a soft jade glow, its immense wings like sheets of emerald mica. A new kind of silence filled the hall, broken only by a low, resonant hum, like the faint, drawn out sigh of something ancient awakening. The translucent Triceratops lowered its head, its amber horn gently touching the pedestal. The T Rex turned its glowing skull aside, its ghostly teeth clicking softly together, not in menace, but in some slow, instinctive stretch of being. They weren't looking at Elias. They were too absorbed in the awareness of their new, luminous forms. Elias pressed himself against a column. There was no fear, only pure fairy tale awe. The museum was asleep, but it dreamed in wonders, and he alone could see those dreams and guard them. Now he was ready to witness what would awaken next in the Hall of Art. Elias moved slowly, cautiously, out of the Hall of Paleontology. The warm amber glow of the Triceratops and the golden shimmer of the T Rex followed him as he went. The soft scent of grass gradually faded, replaced by a drier, sharper aroma, the smell of aged canvas and old oil paint, as he entered the Hall of Art. This hall was cold and motionless, unlike the last. Elias stopped before the largest painting, the Autumn Pier. It showed a foggy old dock and boats with sagging sails beneath a heavy, leaden sky. The painting had always seemed melancholic and dull to him, but now the surface of the canvas wasn't smooth. It shimmered with a faint, inner light, deeper, more fluid than the glow of the dinosaurs. Elias stepped closer. Then he heard it, the faint creak of wood and the soft, musical chime of chains, the sound of boats gently rocking in the water. He saw movement within the frame. The leaden sky of the painting slowly shifted hue, becoming a tender violet. The mist around the pier thickened and thinned according to its own invisible rhythm. Ripples ran across the water, and one of the boats, a small red fishing boat, drifted gently away from the dock. Then a figure appeared. From behind the canvas sail peeked a boy in a woolen blue cap. His face was alive, thoughtful. He looked directly at Elias, though his gaze was soft and serene, as if he saw through him into another, deeper reality. The boy did not leave the painting. He simply lived within it, watching the tide. Elias leaned against the wall, smiling. This quiet, incredible miracle felt even cozier than the dinosaurs. It smelled of salt water and wet wood. And in that moment, Elias understood. He wasn't merely the watchman of the museum. He was the visitor of its living dreams. He remained there, listening to the gentle, lulling creak of the ship chains, a sound that slowly seeped into his mind, promising peace. Elias stepped away from the painting, unwilling to disturb the sleepy drift of the red boat. The scent of the sea and the melodic chime of chains slowly faded, replaced by the dry, dusty air of the next hall, the Hall of Rare Artifacts. This was the oldest and darkest room in the museum, filled with objects whose purpose had long been forgotten. Unlike the radiant dinosaurs or the awakened painting, there was no bright light here. There was music, a fine, high pitched singing, like the sound of silk threads being plucked, or the whisper of wind slipping through tiny cracks. The sound was soothing. It vibrated somewhere deep in the chest, lulling and calling for silence. Elias approached the central display case. Inside lay ancient, inlaid boxes made of dark, unknown wood. The singing came from within. The case was filled with tiny, translucent beings, like fireflies made of flame, but with wings of melting autumn frost. They didn't fly, they hovered gently in place. These little spirits were the color of tarnished silver, and within each of them pulsed a soft, coal like warmth. They circled around an ancient wooden flute, resting in a velvet cradle, and their collective song was a quiet lullaby. Elias understood. These were the spirits of stories, singing to the artifacts, reminding them that they were not forgotten. He knelt carefully beside the display. Fatigue washed over him, but it was a pleasant, drowsy kind of tiredness. The music wrapped around him, each note easing a little of the day's tension. The creatures paid him no mind. They simply continued their eternal, nocturnal work. The air smelled sweet and dry, like candied fruit and dried lavender. Elias closed his eyes, letting the silvery, shimmering song carry him away from wakefulness. He guarded their sleep, and they, in turn, lulled him into theirs. Elias lingered a few moments longer by the display of the story spirits, sinking into their soft, silvery song. When it finally faded, he rose and moved on, his steps slow and drowsy. He walked as if through a dream, carried by the waves of the museum's living magic. He entered the Hall of Ancient Maps. It was a vast, circular chamber, its walls lined with old, yellowed maps of unknown lands, their edges frayed by time. At the center stood a giant, rotating globe, its surface covered in intricate illustrations of mythical creatures. The air here was cool, filled with the scent of old parchment, wax, and the faintest trace of dry hay. Then Elias heard a soft, rustling sound, like wind moving through tall, dry grass. He lifted his gaze to the globe. Across the great, slowly turning surface, over the painted mountains and deserts, they appeared. Tiny, translucent griffins. Their bodies glowed with a gentle opaline light that shifted from pale rose to greenish pearl. Their feathers were so fine they seemed woven from strands of spider silk, and the faint rustle Elias heard was the whisper of their wings. They didn't fly high. They moved carefully along the drawn rivers and mountain ridges, their small claws barely touching the painted world. They were searching for something. Elias stepped closer and watched as one griffin delicately pecked at a bright painted star on the map. The star slowly dimmed, and the griffin glowed brighter, as if it had absorbed the light. He understood. They were the keepers of lost stars, beings who gathered the light of forgotten constellations drawn on ancient maps, carrying it back to their mythical realms. Their slow, graceful motion across the surface of the globe was mesmerizing. Elias felt a deep wave of peace as he watched them go about their quiet, nocturnal work. He found himself wishing he could join them, to wander gently through the maps of dreams, gathering lost light. Leaning against a nearby pedestal, he let his eyelids grow heavy, listening to the soft, lulling rustle of the opaline griffin's wings. Elias stepped away from the globe, carrying with him the soothing rustle of the opaline griffins. His eyelids were heavy, but curiosity still guided his steps. He entered the hall of ancient navigation, devoted to sea voyages and the old maps of oceans. The air here was cold and filled with the scent of salty wood, old rope, and the faint, fresh trace of fish scales. At the center of the room stood a massive model of an ancient sailing ship. Elias approached the main display case, where sea charts, sextants, and dried starfish rested. Then he heard them, a soft, wet smack smack, and a playful, bubbling laughter, like someone gently slapping the surface of water. The case that held the ocean maps was not dry. Inside, upon a layer of the thinnest, glowing mist, floated translucent creatures that looked like small seals, yet their skin shimmered with the shifting colors of the northern lights. Their bodies glowed with hues of turquoise, pink, and violet. They were tiny, impossibly quick, and full of mischief. These were the luminous ceilings, spirits of the wandering lights. They rolled and splashed across the sea charts, leaving behind trails of shimmering wetness. They smacked and twirled, racing each other to touch the painted red lighthouses on the maps. When one reached a lighthouse, it flared brighter and let out a joyous, bubbling cry. They carried with them the pure, laughing chill of ocean water. Elias pressed his forehead against the cool glass of the display. His sleepy smile widened. He felt a childlike joy washing away the last traces of weariness. He watched as the quickest of them, a turquoise ceiling, reached a bay marked with a mermaid symbol and froze there, glowing softly like a hidden treasure. They were lost in their merry, nocturnal game, and their carefree joy was the finest lullaby. Elias realized that he was not merely a night guard now, but the sole audience of a quiet, magical performance. He closed his eyes for a moment to remember the salty cold of the air and the playful, bubbling laughter that now gently lulled him to rest. Elias stepped away from the display of orange spirits of mischief, feeling the lightness and warmth of their silent merriment. His feet carried him almost automatically into the Hall of Large Mammals, a space governed by an entirely different world, a world of cold depths and enormous slumbering mysteries. This hall was the most spacious and the tallest. In its very center, suspended from the ceiling by thick cables, floated the massive skeleton of a blue whale. Its colossal curved ribs and enormous hollow skull dominated the space. The air around it smelled of ocean salt and cold, mineral-rich silt, offering a crisp freshness in contrast to the dusty halls he had passed. The whale did not glow with vivid color, yet its presence was immense, a weighty calm that pressed down on the room. And then Elias heard it. It was not a sound, but a vibration, a deep, low hum that penetrated not through the ears, but through bones and chest. It was whale song, but not ordinary. It was a slow, timeless moan, a lingering, melancholic melody that sounded as if the entire ocean were breathing in the room, collecting all the soothing noises of the night. The hum lulled and enveloped Elias, relaxing every muscle in his body. He felt tiny and utterly protected beneath this sleeping giant. Elias lifted his gaze to the whale skeleton and saw a thick, semi-transparent, midnight blue black mist slowly seeping from its enormous eye sockets. The mist smelled of nothing but pure, infinite depth and forgotten oceanic dreams. The fog descended slowly, filling the hall. Tiny, glowing, translucent creatures drifted lazily within it, like plankton or stardust, millions of minuscule blue and green sparks. This was the oceanic plankton of dreams, emerging from the memories of the whales. They shimmered and danced beneath the giant ribs of the skeleton, forming a living, twinkling constellation right on the museum floor. At that moment, the hum of the whale song shifted. It became like the sound of a colossal heart beating, slowly, rhythmically vibrating in the silence. Elias felt his own heartbeat synchronize with this ancient oceanic rhythm. He realized that the whales were singing a lullaby, not just for themselves, but for everyone in the hall, drawing them into the safest, deepest oblivion. Elias sank onto the nearest bench. The song deepened, not louder, but richer, lulling him even more. He let the cold, salty scent and the gentle, resonant hum envelop him, turning the museum into a vast, warm aquarium. He understood that the safest place in the world at that moment was here, beneath the sleeping, singing giant, wrapped in the cozy cocoon of an autumn night. Elias rose from the bench, carrying with him the deep, low rhythm of the whale song. The blue and green sparks of dream plankton slowly settled on his clothes, enhancing the feeling of magical calm. He did not rush, letting the night's enchantment guide him. He entered the hall of freshwater inhabitants, dedicated to river and lake life. The air was filled with the fresh, damp scent of river water, wet silt, and blooming reeds. In the center of the hall stood a massive dry diorama, painted with a lake and populated by dried, stuffed frogs. Suddenly, Elias heard it, a soft, wet croaking, like tiny water-filled bells, punctuated by barely audible splashes on something soft. He approached the diorama. The dried frog figures came alive. They were now enormous, translucent creatures, their bodies glowing with a pure emerald light that pulsed gently. Twice the size of a human head, they moved with extraordinary grace. These luminous frogs seemed to perform a quiet, slow dance throughout the hall. They did not leap sharply but glided smoothly through the air, landing gently on pedestals and railings, making soft, wet plop sounds. From them came the fresh, clean scent of rain and aquatic mint. Near them, over the painted lake of the diorama, tiny, translucent tadpoles swirled lazily, glowing with a soft aquamarine light and moving their small tails silently. Along the edges of the diorama, miniature translucent turtles marched solemnly, their shells shimmering with deep forest green, their soft, rustling breaths audible. A giant emerald frog slowly hopped directly in front of Elias. Its enormous golden eyes met his gaze. It croaked a deep, melodic note that made him smile. It was the choir of the night, full of joy and serenity. Elias knelt to meet their magical leaps at eye level. He felt all tension finally leave his body. This hall was brimming with life, pure and carefree, and Elias was part of it. He closed his eyes, letting the fresh scent of water and the gentle croaking lull him. The museum was not asleep. It was alive with its brightest dreams, and Elias was the only one who could share in this wonder. Him, but his sleepy curiosity urged him onward. He slowly left the hall of freshwater inhabitants, and the damp, fresh scent of river mint gradually gave way to the dry, clean aroma of withered grass and damp hay. He entered the hall of ancient hunters, a section devoted to life on land. Here, the dry, clean scent of autumn fields, withered grass, and moist hay reminded Elias of quiet fall meadows. Instead of stuffed animals, the hall was filled with movement and warmth. Pedestals and the marble floor came alive with soft, fluffy creatures. These were the rabbits of silence. Their bodies glowed with a gentle milky white light that tinged slightly blue at the edges, and their fur was so thick and weightless that they seemed like living clouds. Their movements were slow and graceful, and their fur emitted a quiet, silky rustle, the coziest sound of the night. The rabbits did not run, they glided slowly across the floor, slowing time itself. They made no sound besides the silky, lulling whisper of their fur. Their enormous black eyes twinkled at Elias with a warm, kindly light, as if sharing with him the secret of this serene magic. Near them, at the bases of the columns, sat the sleepy ground squirrels. Tiny and round, they glowed with a warm, light brown hue, like the shell of a nut. They did not move, simply sitting in deep, meditative silence. Their tiny paws held miniature glowing seeds, which pulsed slowly and rhythmically with golden light. Elias realized the rabbits gathered all the rough sounds of the night, transforming them into silky rustles, while the ground squirrels guarded the museum's deepest sleep. Their combined quiet wrapped around him, filling his heart with cozy, childlike calm. He leaned against the nearest display case, listening to the lulling, silky sound, feeling the warm, white glow carry him deeper into magical slumber. Elias slowly left the Hall of Hunters, still filled with the silky rustle of the rabbits and the golden calm of the ground squirrels. His steps were almost weightless as he entered the Hall of Eastern Art, where silk scrolls, antique fans, and jade figurines were on display. Here the air was dry and fragrant, scented with sandalwood, dried rice, and the faintest hint of blooming cherry. Elias approached the largest wall, where a massive yellowed silk scroll hung, depicting tall, misty mountains and a single tiny pavilion perched on the edge of a cliff. Then he heard it, the faintest tinkling music. It was the sound of the wind, not cold, but melodic, singing through 1,000 tiny bells. Elias realized this was the music of the wind, released from the scroll itself. He saw movement on the silk. The misty mountains shifted slowly, clouds drifted across the sky, and tiny translucent figures, the spirits of poetry, danced around the pavilion. These spirits were impossibly delicate, ivory colored with a soft pink glow, and their movements created that very tinkling, lulling melody. But the most enchanting thing was that the sky on the scroll began to change. It deepened into a rich, purple blue, dotted with tiny, shining points, stars that should not have appeared in a daytime landscape. Each of these stars emitted a faint, very high, pure chime. Elias leaned against the wall, letting the scent of sandalwood and the ringing melody envelop him. He felt his heart beat slow, aligning with the harmony of the Eastern night. He understood that these spirits were not merely living within the painting, they were rewriting it, filling it with a new magical calm. Elias was the only one listening to this quiet, tinkling concert, and the intimacy of this secret was absolute. Elias left the Hall of Eastern Art, still carrying the tinkling melody and the scent of sandalwood with him. He felt his consciousness expand, embracing all the magical contrasts of the museum. He made his way to the Hall of Ancient Tools, where stone axes, primitive spears, and simple implements of early humans were displayed. This hall was the roughest and most earthy of all. The air smelled of dry wood, tanned hides, and cold ash. Elias approached the central display case, where three massive, unpolished spears stood. Then he heard it, a faint but distinct cracking of branches and a quiet, measured tapping, like someone walking through a dry autumn forest. A dim, silvery green glow emanated from the case. The spears did not come to life, yet a ghostly, translucent forest began to grow around them. From the pedestal, slender, silvered tree branches stretched upward, adorned with delicate, icy leaves. The branches intertwined silently, forming a small, enchanted woodland right beneath the glass. Across the painted, mossy floor of the display, tiny, glowing figures moved cautiously. These were the hunter spirits, tall and slender, woven from pale emerald light. They carried miniature versions of the ancient tools, glowing with a warm golden sheen. They did not hunt, they simply walked through the spectral forest, slowly and silently. Their measured, rhythmic steps, the soft tap of their weightless feet on the painted ground, was the most soothing sound of all. It spoke of primal calm, of the rhythm of life unchanged for millennia. Elias realized that these spirits carried the memory of the silence and peace of the wild. He leaned against the wall, completely relaxed, letting the rhythmic tapping lull him. The museum was preparing for its deepest slumber, and Elias was the only one to share in this blessed, ancient quiet. Elias left the Hall of Ancient Tools, the rhythmic, lulling tapping of the hunter spirits accompanying him. He was no longer walking, he was drifting along the currents of the night's magic. His body felt heavy, while his mind was light, completely enveloped in the warmth of the autumn night and the museum's enchanted dreams. He returned to the central hall. The largest and tallest space in the museum now served as a giant cauldron where all the museum's magic gathered and mingled. The hall shimmered with an incredible layered light. On one side, from the paleontology section, flowed the warm amber orange glow of the Triceratops. From the Hall of Hunters came the soft, milky white light of the rabbits of silence. Above, a dark blue-green haze hung across the hall, brought by the deep songs of the whales. The glowing plankton of the whales drifted slowly through the air, mingling with the faint, silky rustle of the rabbit's fur. Elias stopped in the middle of the hall. He felt each of these sensations simultaneously. The spicy, grassy scent of the Triceratops, the cold, salty breath of the whales, the sweet, clean aroma of river mint from the frogs, and the tinkling, lulling melody of the spirits of poetry. Everything moved around him, but slowly and infinitely peacefully. Overhead, a translucent pterodactyl glided, its jade green wings shimmering and casting emerald shadows on the walls. In a distant corner, the enormous amber triceratops lowered its head, exhaling thick, fragrant steam that settled gently on the floor. Elias approached the main dry fountain he had seen at the start of his shift. He placed an empty latte cup on its edge. In that moment, everything stopped. The silence became deafening, but it was a comforting, full silence. Every creature, from the gigantic dinosaurs to the tiniest glowing insects in the display cases, froze in perfect, collective sleep. Elias closed his eyes. He felt himself become a guardian of this magic. He let the last warm beam of golden light envelop him. He realized he was protecting the museum, yet the museum had given him the coziest, deepest night of his life. His breathing slowed, his heart stilled. He inhaled the scent of every autumn dream in the world. He leaned against the cool marble. The museum slept deeply, and with it, the night's caretaker fell asleep as well, warmed by the magic and peace of this extraordinary autumn night. Elias stood by the fountain, his eyes closed, bathed in a warm golden glow from every direction. He felt like the very heart of calm at the center of this vast, magical dream. All sounds had merged into one continuous, lulling vibration, like the quiet, deep hum of the earth itself. He felt a light, weightless touch. A translucent pterodactyl glided slowly over his head, its jade wing brushing the air gently beside him. It was a blessing, was a recognition of his status as guardian of sleep. Elias smiled slightly without opening his eyes. The air grew heavy with a sweet, soporific scent, a blend of grassy dinosaur steam, the salty frost of the whales, and the silky fragrance of the rabbits. This cozy, layered aroma drew him deeper into sleep, filling him with the kindest, warmest autumn memories. In his half dream, he saw the amber triceratops and the pale yellow T Rex slowly approach each other in the central hall. They were not in conflict. They touched softly with their translucent muzzles, sharing quiet, ancient dreams of sunny days and lush grasses. Their immense, glowing bodies created a motionless, majestic tableau of absolute harmony. Elias knew there was no need to continue his rounds. His work was done. The museum guarded itself, and the best way to watch over it was to share in its slumber. He sank to his knees by the fountain, his back resting against the cold marble. The chill faded, replaced by warmth from thousands of glowing creatures. He let the silence and vibration carry him away. Sleep came quickly and softly, like a fluffy white blanket. Elias did not see dreams, but he felt them. He felt the slow, ancient movement of the T Rex, the playful, bubbling laughter of the glowing seal pups somewhere below, and the silky rustle of the rabbits lulling him. He sensed a gentle, rhythmic rocking of his body, as if he were in that red fishing boat from the painting, drifting slowly across a calm, misty sea. His heart beat deep and steady, echoing the ancient rhythm of the whale song. All the colors, amber, jade, turquoise, and milky white, blended in his mind into a single, warm, golden hue, redolent of autumn spices and infinite calm. Elias was safe. He was home. He slept for so many hours that time lost all meaning. He lay enveloped in light and harmony, deep and still. The first, faintest sound to pull Elias from sleep was distant, a soft jingle. It was the sound of keys turning in the lock of the museum's front door. Morning had arrived. With that sound, all the magic vanished instantly. The golden glow faded, the bubbling laughter fell silent, the silky rustle disappeared. The deep, oceanic hum stilled. Elias slowly opened his eyes. The central hall was vast, empty, and cold. The dinosaur skeletons were once again white and motionless. The scrolls on the walls were nothing more than old fabric. The air smelled only of dust and wax. He felt the chill of the marble floor, rose to his feet, his body astonishingly rested and light. He approached the fountain and picked up his empty cup. Elias smiled. He knew the night had been real. On his sleeve, just above the cuff, clung a tiny golden fluff, a weightless, glimmering strand from the fur of a rabbit of silence. And in his heart remained a deep, warm sense of peace and the extraordinary harmony of autumn. He left the museum, meeting his replacement, and said not a word. He carried this great secret within him, knowing that on the next autumn night, the museum would sing once more. Sleep well, guardian Elias.